Ah, ah, hey, oh, way, ah. So that's the invite to join us. Miigwech.
You so much. I love that song. I know how to sing that song. It's
Yes, you
pretty,
do.
pretty easy, actually. I love it. I love it because it's so easy to sing. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're signing in from. Ani bojo, jawanong no din kwe dishnaka, satellite and dojba, mayan dodem, nehia esque and dao. My name means Southwind Woman. I am Wolf Clan Plains Cree from Saddle Lake, Alberta. And my name was given to me by an elder, Hilda Saret Ba from Batchewana First Nation. Actually, my name, my clan, and my colors were given to me by her. My colonized name is Colleen Heel Cardinal. I am a Kokum of 5 granddaughters and have 4 children. I'm also a 60 Scoop survivor and the co-founder of the 60 Scoop Network based here in Ottawa. I'm your host today, and I'll be introducing our panel in a few minutes after Priscilla and Elaine introduce themselves. Priscilla?
Priscilla, you're on mute.
Hi. Hi, I'm Priscilla. I'm the project manager, and it's a pleasure to work alongside Colleen and Elaine. And nice to see you all here.
So, Bijou, Ani, Tansi, Kwekwe, Wache, Sego, as introduced before. My English name is Elaine Kiknoswe. I'm a 60 Scoop survivor and co-founder with Colleen to the 60 Scoop Network and working along with Priscilla as the project manager for the continued curriculum development and delivery and also webinars. And it's just been just wonderful. And I thank the helpers that came in today to help us have this conversation. So, miigwech. Hi, hi.
All right, next slide. The 60 Scoop, just a little background on the webinar series. So the 60 Scoop, we received money from Indigenous Services Canada to design and develop a trauma-informed training for resolution health support workers across Canada. So in total, we've had 4 in-person, 2.5-day training sessions with Ottawa, Halifax, Edmonton, and Saskatoon. And this webinar was designed to engage resolution health support workers and frontline workers into learning about the 60 Scoop. And the word actually comes from, it's pronounced debe dog jizig, and it translates to our people of the nation or citizens of the nation. And last year I passed tobacco to our colleague, Leroy Bennett, who's also our ceremonial knowledge keeper, and to help us find a word to describe the project. So we're very excited. It was like, it's been a dream come true to create an expanded trauma-informed curriculum specifically by survivors for people working with survivors and Indigenous people across Canada. So we are very excited. This is the last one, but we may keep going. You never know. Let's get to Zoom keeping. So instead of housekeeping, we have Zoom keeping. You'll have to use your own bathroom. We don't have bathrooms here. Just kidding. I can kid around, right? So this session is being recorded. So this one is actually being recorded and we'll post it to our website, Edebendang Jazig, and maybe on our 60 Scoop Network website as well. This will be an interactive session. So we'll be asking you for questions, we'll be asking questions and asking you for feedback so that we can fill in the work that we need to do today. So I mean, within reason, sometimes we can't answer every single question, but so the closed caption, you have a closed caption down below on your toolbar. And if you need closed captions, you can turn it on or off. And we have supports in the room. Elaine Kiknoswe is a trauma-informed health support worker. You can reach her at her email, e66kick@yahoo.com, or contact the Hope for Wellness if any of this material in this thing is bothering you or it triggers strong emotions. So let's see here. Today's topic, oh, sorry, our congratulations to Ali Stony Point. I don't know if Ali Stony Point is here, but she is the winner of our draw for gift certificates. So Ali, I don't know how it works, but Priscilla, maybe you can let me know how you did this.
Yeah, I'll email you, Ali. Congrats.
Very cool. All right, so next slide is, so today's topic is the 60 scoop bundle. Where do we go from here? And we have guests, Marni Hope from the 60 Scoop Indigenous Society and Nadine Swartout, who is joining us. And Nadine has worked in family service and helping field for over 15 years and absolutely loves it. She is passionate about creating, developing, and working with 60 Scoop and child family CFS survivors on healing services they feel they need in their journey. She is passionate about repatriation supports and law and First Nations child welfare law. Sorry. And Marni is a resilient individual with a background rooted in Blackfoot culture from Kainai. She's a 60 Scoop survivor and a dedicated mother of 3. She contributes to the educational landscape as part of the Indigenous Services team at Lethbridge College, concurrently pursuing her master's degree in education. Yay, cool. Outside of her academic pursuits, Marni finds joy in the outdoors and is passionate about exploring different places, often with her children by her side. Her commitment to education extends beyond her workplace as she serves on the Board of Governors at Lethbridge College and holds a position as the Vice President for the 60 Scoop Indigenous Society of Alberta. She actively participates as a board member for the Lethbridge Sports Hall and Fame and is further actively engaged in community initiatives, serving as a valuable member of the Reconciliation Lethbridge Advisory Committee. In addition to her various roles, Marni engages in freelance working, specializing in the creation of cultural competency assessments, showcasing her dedication and promoting her dedication to promoting understanding and inclusivity. I'm sorry. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And today we'll be having a conversation, and our panel is here to help us in also with the folks that have joined us, the attendees, to help us talk about this 60 Scoop bundle. Where do we go from here? So, 1 second. Marni's gonna take us through. Okay, we have a little thing here. We have a little poll first. All right, so we want to ask you, do you know what a bundle is? That's great. Thank you for participating. Yay, it's like a contest. The yes is winning. That's encouraging that people know. Okay. It's almost a tie. It's almost a tie. Okay, it's not a tie. Let's see here. Okay, we're getting there. Okay. 77 of 108, 78, 72 participated, and more than 65% of you said, yes, you know what a bundle is. That's great. But we're going to, for the folks that don't know, we're going to go into that. So when we were in Edmonton, I think it was January, we were in Edmonton delivering training, and it was interesting because let me just stop sharing that. It was interesting because I think myself as a survivor, I've forgotten what it's like to start out not knowing anything. And I just assumed that people would know what a bundle was. And, Marni was the one who said, we can't assume that people know what a bundle is. So we were wrong to assume that. And we have to remember that when we're learning, we have to meet people where they're at. So just knowing what a bundle is important. So Marni's going to share about a ceremonial bundle and then our other bundle that we carry within us. So Marni, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Colleen, and everybody here today. I am coming to you guys from my traditional lands of the Blackfoot people here in Southern Alberta. Just wanted to mention that first before we get started. But yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what is a bundle. So I put together I wrote a few things down so I don't forget anything, because that tends to happen when you're kind of put on the spot. And I think this is really important and for what we're going to do next. So okay, so I'm coming to you from a place of my Blackfoot knowledge, because I can only speak to that, but I do find that there's going to be some similarities across the board from wherever you are and whatever community you're from. So I'm going to teach what I know about Blackfoot bundles from my own Blackfoot's perspective. So Blackfoot bundles are sacred, first of all, within our Blackfoot communities and within our traditions. So bundles, they encapsulate basically the essence of cultural identity, spirituality, and healing practices that are deeply rooted in our Blackfoot ways. They hold a significant there's a sacred significance to them. So bundles, they are merely physical. They're not merely physical artifacts, first of all. They are sacred repositories of cultural knowledge, ancestral wisdom, and spiritual energy. They serve as the tangible connections to sacred realms of Blackfoot cosmology, I would say. And then, so to going into a little bit further, a little bit more in depth, that symbolic importance. So there's a symbolism that permeates within the items that are within these bundles. So each element holds a profound meaning, which where there's representation basically that relates to the natural world. There's ancestral stories that come behind these bundles. And then there's that collective experience to us as Blackfoot people. Then there's a spiritual significance. So that spirituality is interwoven into the fabric of these Blackfoot bundles that we hold. They're essentially conduits for that spiritual energy, and they provide a means for individuals to connect with unforeseen forces. It's a way to seek guidance from your ancestors and to engage in rituals that bring about balance and harmony. And so they bring on that healing aspect. So there's a healing practice that goes into these bundles. So there's that healing power, and that lies in their ability to serve as kind of instruments of emotional, mental, and spiritual restoration. And us as Blackfoot people, we have historically utilized these bundles in healing ceremonies, for rites of passage, and rituals that are aimed at addressing wounds inflicted by these historical traumas that we experience, especially as 60 Scoop survivors. And then it brings a connection to us back to our ancestors. So through our Blackfoot bundles, individuals are able to forge a profound connection back to our ancestors. So the items within the bundles, they often carry the stories of resilience, survival, and the enduring spirit of the Blackfoot people across the many generations. And they also are a means to give us that guidance and protection. So Blackfoot bundles will help us kind of on our journeys, on our paths, as a means to kind of protect us along that life journey. They carry with them sources of strength and guidance and helping to navigate the complexities of existence while fostering a sense of identity and belonging. And then this part, which I'm super excited about, I think we're kind of dive into next, is that holistic approach to healing. So, these bundles, they transcend that physical healing. So they encompass that emotional, the mental, and the spiritual, and the physical well-being, to make us whole again. So these individuals, as individuals, as Blackfoot people, we can engage with our own bundles. And then that allows us to move forward on our healing journey. I hope that made sense. Just kind of reading off my notes here. I'm like, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, so it's like they're there to provide all that physical, mental, emotional, spiritual means to move forward in our journey. And so kind of lastly, they're basically living cultural artifacts. So Blackfoot bundles, they've evolved through generations, while preserving the timeless essence of our Blackfoot traditions. So, but they're not only a reflection of the past, but they also guide us into moving into the present and into the future. So that's kind of really in a really quick run through of what a bundle is, especially from a Blackfoot perspective. So I think moving forward in the next little bit here, we're going to kind of put together our own means, our own way to create our own bundle and how we can use that to move forward in our own healing journey. Before we go, I want to share with you a few my personal things that I have in my bundle toolkit. I have I put medicines in there. I would put like for me, sweetgrass, as a Blackfoot person, we really relate to that sweetgrass. So I would have some medicines in my bundle. I could put in some feathers or something, some elements from the environment. Maybe I could put in a photograph. I'll change photographs or like letters that people give me that touch me. And then there's the traditional artifacts that I have that personally help and guide me through my healing journey. I have a traditional Blackfoot stand-up headdress that I'm just going to grab and show you because it's right here. I don't know if you guys can see it, probably not, but I have this headdress and it sits in my office and I see it every day and it helps me remind myself that I'm on this good healing path and to continue to move forward. So that's another example of what it would be in my personal bundle. And but yeah, I think we're gonna create our own later on down in this presentation. So I will leave it there and pass it over to Colleen.
All right, so no, go back. What I wanted to talk about, maybe Elaine could help me out with this, is the bundle that we're going to be building. Because there's a physical bundle with items,
Yeah.
ceremonial items and things we collect. Like I have a bundle too, and I
Yeah.
have rocks. Sometimes while I lived on Lake Superior, when I lived back in Sault Ste. Marie, we used to go out to the lake and you'd find certain rocks that just speak to you and you'd pick them up and you'd put them into your bundle and have some medicines there. Medicines that people have gifted me. I have
Yeah.
some from like when I lived in Sault Ste. Marie almost 25 years ago that I've never used. But different things that have meaning to you that were given to you and or you've traded for. I don't have a pipe, but some people have a pipe. Maybe Elaine can speak to that about her bundle.
I just wanted to add in like there's personal bundles and then bundles for the people. There's bundles now for organizations. Like
Mhm.
there's different elements of bundles. And in there, sometimes if you're fortunate to go to the ones that are able to realign you back to your clan system, because not everybody has that, right? The connection, and you may have helpers from the different clans, like bear claws or tufts of fur or the actual pelts. Nowadays, in institutions, they actually have their flags or their eagle staffs, but when you're talking about a personal bundle, like Marni was saying, there's different things that you can carry, and just like Colleen was saying, sometimes it's those places of where we've been raised. Like I was just over in Arizona and I grabbed a whole bunch of rocks from Sedona, like those different places of where we've been, right? And where we're going to take it, where, like sometimes like Colleen was sharing, sometimes medicine is given to us and then we put it aside. Like I was given some tea from my territory and I didn't drink it and I got it before the pandemic. So there's those different places of knowing, there's going to be a time. And sometimes, we're not even sure. And there's memorial bundles, with round dances. There's what do you carry? What is your powwow kit? If you dance in powwow, or if you're part of those different lodges, Medewan lodges, Sundance lodges, like there's different elements that are included in your bundles and your way of life. It's kind of like when you're when you're going on a long car trip, like what do you have in your car, right? But
Yes.
it's trying to transfer it into this place called bundle because it's really important. It's really important that you have that gas, that you have that emergency, that you have that extra food, you have that medicine that fills you too, and that
All right.
reassurance.
All
So
right. Thank
that's
you.
my add-in. Thanks.
The only thing that I wanted to add was Marnie had suggested, or had also said there's an abstract of bundles where we have songs and prayers, like you
Yeah,
carry certain songs with you that you share with folks like you did today.
yeah.
So the other part of the what we're working on today is our bundle for of tools, right? So what are we taking away from the webinar series? How can we use it in our practice as service providers, but how we can, how 60 Scoop survivors can build a bundle to carry with them, within them, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. So we're not giving out bundles today. We're giving out wellness bundles today. So next slide, please. So I have an interactive question for folks, for participants, and I wanted to ask you, why do you think our communities are not talking about the 60 Scoop? And why is the 60 Scoop not talked about at a national level? So this is something we hear commonly from 60 Scoop survivors, and you're free to answer it in the question and answer, please. Why do you think our communities are not talking about the 60 Scoop? Why do you think it's not being talked about? And also, why is the 60 Scoop not talked about at a national level, like the Indian residential schools and the day schools? Like, why isn't it at that level yet? What do you think? This is your opportunity to answer questions. Anybody on our panel have any suggestions?
I just think I would say that it's the lack of knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
education. It's people are, I know around here, I can only speak for my own experience, but it's around here, people are honestly just still hearing about residential school. And so we all know that the 60 Scoop is an extension of the residential school. But yeah, so if you aren't even hearing about the residential school and you're just starting to kind of touch on it, that nobody's really even looking at the 60 Scoop.
Yeah.
I always say it's a collectivity thing, right? Like, I always share the story about my mother-in-law Irene. Like when we go to powwows, everyone's like, she's always saying hi to everybody, right? And I'm just nosy. No one knows me, but I'm nosy. I say, "Who's that? How do you know them?" And she says, like, one of the two residential schools that she went to. Oh, how do you know this person? Oh, they went to this residential school. How do you know this person? Oh, we were at this residential school together, right? So there's that collective trauma that they all went through together in their life, where like with us as 60 Scoop survivors, we don't if we were lucky, we got to be adopted with our siblings, right? And but most of us didn't. So I think there's that piece too of like how individualistic it is, that experience of adoption, and not knowing where to find us, you know.
Answers, yeah, great answers. It's true. It's not talked about at a national level. Maybe Priscilla, we can share some of the reasons that we know, and we'll have a conversation about it. People are saying lots of distractions currently happening in this broken world. That's true. People aren't interested, Teresa Turmel says. Shame and pain and grief, blame, anger, fear, powerlessness, lack of context. So lack of context is not knowing that this was part of a larger project. A lot of adoptees feel like this was like they're unique and they're very alone and isolated in this, and they don't realize that there's hundreds or thousands of other survivors that went through this. And because we grew up isolated, right? And then when we find out it's happened to like thousands of others, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. So the lack of context, there's not a lot of people doing a 60 scoop education. What we're finding is a lot of stuff is on the internet, but it's very surface. It's just kind of barely, breaks the surface. It goes really into what really happened and how the provinces and the federal government work together to do this massive assimilation project. And it's not talked about in that context where survivors feel like their parents were to blame, or they're given a narrative that, it was oh, okay, yeah. Are you talking to me or somebody else? Oh, okay. I'm sorry, we have a little behind the scenes thing going on here. So we can see your answers. Let's see here. It's not being talked about because foster children were completely isolated. Yes, you're right. And then they try to repatriate the reserves. So what about in our communities at the leadership level? Why do you think it's not being talked about at that level? Aaron Cosmo says lack of sense of what falls within 60 scoop experiences may be an amalgamation of 60 scoop folks in the larger system of adoption. It's true. We haven't gotten to the point where we work together yet. We're starting, but we haven't got to that point yet. There's a lot of lateral violence and that's just, due to trauma, and acting out. So I hope we get to that point. Child protection agencies are continuing similar practices with Indigenous children in Canada. Indigenous children continue to be removed from their family. You're right, it's still ongoing, so that trauma is still happening. Our children are still being removed and placed in non-Indigenous households. They're prioritizing non-Indigenous households over Indigenous households. They have a lot of folks that are like non-Indigenous that get paid a whole bunch of money to take care of our children, but they won't put those resources and supports into Indigenous households. And I'm kind of going through that right now. So those responsible don't want to acknowledge that they took part in such a painful, traumatic displacement, robbing our culture and childhood. When you say that, do you mean like the non-Indigenous responsible people are the Indigenous community leaders? Maybe you can maybe go in a little bit more detail on that. I agree though. It's not part of a curriculum right now. So I know in schools, they do a little blurb on 60 scoop education, but it's really like, oh, these kids were taken away and adopted. And they don't really go into like the policies and practices and politics that were happening at this time. Let's see here. So some people have only heard of the millennial scoop last week, and it's still happening. You think the 60 scoop movement is still very young? I've been in it for about 20 years now, doing the education, and I'm tired. I'm getting burnt. So for a lot of people, it's new, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's just." And for me, I'm like, oh, "You're finally catching up to us. You're catching up with the knowledge, and it's hard because there's not a lot of support for the work we do. It's not funded well. There's a lack of awareness in our communities, even amongst our leaders, and what it means and how it represented children. So maybe we can go on to the next slide. Thank you for all the answers. So what do 60 scoop survivors need from service providers? So I'll share a little story. When I first started going to get counseling and so on, I had to educate my service providers on what it meant being adopted, and how it impacted me, like the trauma, the displacement, the imposter syndrome, what it means to be adopted and raised in a household that mistreats me. And a lot of people don't recognize the differences between Indian residential school, day schools, and 60 scoop survivors. We kind of get lumped into one whole thing. Everybody thinks it's the same, but it's not. So what do you think 60 scoop survivors need from service providers? Help us let them know what we need. Maybe our panel could help.
I know for me, my dream would be for there to be 60 scoop um, supports in every province, like little like teams that can work and that are fully funded for travel to go see 60 scoopers wherever they are.
Like
To
repatriation?
Yeah, repatriation supports, counseling, like past the meeting the family, that those services that we would get in Canada um, are usable outside of Canada, like in the States or wherever they are, such as like counseling for 60 Scoop survivors, genealogy supports, um, just all of those things, you know. And I think with 60 Scoop survivors, we also be thinking about our children, right? Like in our grandchildren and the impacts it's had on them and even helping them get connected and to community or to know where they come from and maybe why. Like, you know, I know for me with my mom, we had a really toxic relationship for a long time. There was a lot of hurt and anger there. She was a 60 scooper and I am too, right? So both of us got taken and I was really angry at her for a really long time, and it took probably 8 to 10 years before I was able to forgive her, right? And really understand where she was coming from,
Mhm.
and why she was the way that she was, and why she had addiction problems, and why, you know what I mean, like what was going on with her. And I think that's another aspect of 60 Scoop survivors that we really have to be cognizant of is our children and our grandchildren, right? And um, how we can heal those relationships, you know, especially if we're not, if we're raising them, if we've raised them or we're raising them and we haven't fixed some of those trauma responses we have with them.
Yeah, it's true. And I think a lot of us carry some resentment or anger towards our biological parents without any context of what actually was happening for them. And for
Mhm.
service providers, to understand this and help us work through this, to recognize that anger, rage, indifference, because I also was very, very angry at my biological parents, and blamed them for my
Mhm.
adoption and didn't want to get to know them because of that. And you know, the typical family relationship kinships for us are broken in many ways. So we don't have these kinships that, you know, that are romanticized in indigeneity, memes and all this other stuff. We don't have that typically, and we have to kind of have our own family of choice. We want service providers to understand this, that sometimes family, some of us don't have family, a typical family, like I don't, but the other thing was, I'm just kind of looking through the question, trauma-informed care practices for service providers. So Tiffany Jung said trauma-informed care practices for, so we want our service providers to be trauma-informed. And by trauma-informed, what do we mean? What is trauma-informed? It's such an overused word. What do we mean by trauma-informed?
Well, I think it's where the services are delivered in a manner that recognizes the impact of this trauma, that promotes safety and avoids that re-traumatization. That's kind of my take on it.
It's true. Like, so sometimes if service providers don't have that context, they can actually like um alienate clients if they don't have that trauma-informed approach. And Elaine explained it earlier as being, you know, having listening and responding differently. How did you frame that, Elaine?
I said a lot of times it might be willing to stop and answer the questions, because that place of curiosity as survivors, sometimes we've never even seen it before. And Marnie, I really thank you for bringing that up in Edmonton. Like, really stop and give patience, give grace, give compassion, to really recognize, oh, I'm going too fast. So in my quickness, I also have to recognize I'm not going to gloss over something that might need might need a bit more information, and not take it personally or on my agenda time, because it takes time to even be comfortable to be welcomed in, right? The
There's,
invitation
yeah,
is really important.
yes. I think one of the things when I was approaching service providers was that they wouldn't understand me because we literally been brainwashed into white assimilation. So we don't think the same way we would typically think as somebody who was raised in the community. And I also felt like my trauma was too much for them, that they wouldn't be able to handle me. So Julie Radke says, as a therapist, white, honestly, events like this I need. Please share. It's not just adoption trauma, it's identity theft trauma, trafficking trauma. And then, as mentioned before, the work for repatriation also comes with lateral violence and gatekeeping, which is true. And that's part of the elephant in the room, is where when we try to repatriate or go back to our communities, we're not looked at as belonging or as deserving of belonging to that nation that we come from. We definitely need government supports to help those who were scooped from their births. Somebody already put that up, but a more open and facilitated process. Right now, everything's kind of behind the scenes and piecemeal. There's not really anybody doing this work. Even though we have dedicated funds for it, for the Healing Foundation, we don't have anybody helping us through this process. We literally have to do it on our own. And then assistance with identity crisis. We want our service providers to understand identity crisis, what it means to have our identities altered and manipulated, and how to come back to that. Let's see.
I even think too, just the basic cultural competency, there are really a lot of times there's just that lack of cultural awareness.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna get next slide.
A lot of our providers.
We definitely want our service providers to understand the impact of colonization, right? And that's, for the most part, I think they understand that a lot of bad stuff happened, but I think they think it happened like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and how very, very recent has been for us, and that we're still here, we're still trying to get over it. So
I think it also, I just wanted to add in there when we were talking earlier about how come we're not talking about it. And even as survivors, we're unlearning what they wrote about us, because there's set things that were written about us: abandoned, neglected, not, no kin, no family, like all these isolating words that gives the outside public like that permission. Well, they were abandoned, neglected Indian kids or Métis kids or Inuit kids. Of course, we had to save them, and that's the narrative, to save the Indian, right? And that has to be a big unlearning constantly. So it's creating, someone wrote here, Tiffany wrote, creating a space for the individuals we serve with empathy and kindness, like really, really having authentic empathy and authentic kindness, and leave your own what you think it is at the door.
yes, meeting people where they're at, right? So
Yeah.
we can't assume that everybody wants to go back to culture, or that everybody wants to repatriate to their community, that we have to work with people where they're at. And some people are very much involved in the religion that they were brought up in, and they may not want cultural teachings, but they still need to understand the context of like what happened to them, right? And that's their choice, but it can be difficult, right? Because we assume sometimes that people, just because they're indigenous, that they want that they have access to cultural services, that they can just go to a friendship center and show up there and say, hey, give me my culture. I'm here now, and that it's a wide open, arms wide open kind of greeting, but that is not real. That's not true. So we're going to move on to the next one, which is the let's build our bundle. And we're going to ask you to help us, help us. Hold on. I'll wait till she's ready. Help us build a bundle for you. As a non-Indigenous service provider, this can apply to you too. So what will you take away from this activity spiritually, emotionally, physically, and mentally? So spiritual, we'll start with spiritual. So as a 60 scoop survivor, spiritually, what did I need, or what do I need for my wellness and my healing, from whether it's from a service provider or whether it's for myself? At the time, I needed access to knowledge keepers, elders, but not just any knowledge keepers or elders, safe, vetted, inclusive elders who can meet me where I'm at. And that's hard to find. It's really hard to find elders who will meet you, because in the past, the elders and knowledge keepers that I've communicated with have been very gruff, kind of like turned me away from the culture because it kind of scared me. So the other thing was, you guys want to help out here?
I think for me with like the spiritual part of like my bundle would be prayer. And like for myself, I was raised Christian in a Christian home. But now I practice my traditional ways, and I will say like prayer in both of those areas is the same. Like you just pray. And I know like for my spiritual health that was really important. Um Also getting to the lodge. I'm gonna say this is that most, like if you're in an urban area, there are places that do ceremony, right? And they would be open to helping you um, participate in those things. And I think that's important for survivors to know, like those things are available. But again, like what Colleen was saying, like making sure people are safe, and and like not every person's going to be a fit for you, like spiritually, as a spiritual leader as well, right? Like you have to find where your spirit feels safe with the person that you're sharing with, right? But I know for me, like spiritually, prayer is a big thing. And then the medicines, right? Like smudging, like I had a good smudge this morning. Um,
So,
yeah,
like,
and
sorry, making sure that there's medicines available to use, right?
yeah,
And what are those medicines? So what are our options? Having, resources where people can see them. So if you're a non-Indigenous provider, making sure that there's a resource there so that people recognize, hey, these are our sacred medicines. If I go to a non-Indigenous service provider and they show medicines, and that there's an option, a different option, that makes me feel included and safe as an Indigenous person, that they've done the work. And also given the option to smudge or lay tobacco or have access to medicines at that service provider's office or whatever. Um, and if you're a non-Indigenous service provider, refer to safe resources, to have a list of Indigenous resources, or consult with an elder, a knowledge keeper, on how to do that practice, so that if you have to refer an Indigenous client, you know where to do it. And we're not saying that for you to smudge with them or practice culture with them, is to make that available for them. So if I went to a counselor or therapist, I would have the option to smudge if I needed to, or to have a spray. Because Elaine and I sometimes use sprays at our workplace because we can't smudge at that time, but it can be really difficult, the work we do. So we smudge ourselves down with spray, with medicine. So we can put that spiritual stuff up there. I mean, you guys can throw some stuff in there if you have any suggestions for your spiritual bundle, what you need for your wellness. Maybe Priscilla can put that one up there now, like by clicking it. And for our emotional one, what do you need emotionally for wellness? So undoing that harm, when you live in a household where you're taught to be somebody different and you kind of take on all those characteristics of that household you were growing up into, sometimes there's work to undo that, right? And somebody needs to tell you that it's not okay to be like this or not okay to be like that, like, or I grew up in a household that was very racist and would say very racist things. I thought that was normal. And until somebody told me different, I continued to act that way. And I had to unlearn that and undoing harmful, dysfunctional, toxic um, habits that we've, adopted through our life and we don't know any better. So having good supports, good role models, seeking good supports and role models in our community, whether it's through, I know in Ottawa, we have like Minwashin Lodge, we have like different Indigenous organizations where we can seek out those kind of role models. Is there any more input for emotional, what you would need for your emotional wellness?
I think a lot of it is like also just like what Nadine was sharing, like making the links like in a national conversation, and having just like what we're doing with Alberta and Manitoba and those different places that say, hey, who do you use? Who works well with survivors? And having that larger conversation, like who does work well with survivors? Because Sarah Jackson wrote, a lot of elders are still dealing with their own trauma,
Uh-huh.
right? And it is hard to find what they, and I'm always navigating what is an elder. Like I'm going back to the beginning. What is an elder? What makes them an elder? How do you know they're an elder? Because there seems to be this unwritten, and I've said it before, there's this unwritten book, that I can't see. And so I'm like, how'd they get there? Like, how does that happen? Or even what is a prayer? Like, what is my prayer? Do I have a prayer? Like, and it's okay to explore it and say, well, maybe my prayer is simpler. You're right. When I've seen other traditional carriers or knowledge or elders, and they have really long prayers, I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'm at those baby steps of learning about those prayers for myself and giving myself, and encouraging survivors. It takes time. We don't get to the big building or the big block right away. We start just making those little baby steps, even for courage, for our own truth, for our own love. You're
Mm-hmm.
right. It's going to take time, you know.
Somebody would say compassion with understanding another's
Mhm.
journey under emotional.
Yeah.
So sometimes we just need that compassion towards each other and understanding, to stop the judgment and the lateral violence, that each person's on their own journey, understanding and empathy for each other. That, sometimes we act out in different ways towards each other, and we have to understand that, and have compassion and understanding for each other.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
think that's like what we talked
I
about
I just
with Dennis Wendigo about like trauma in our body, right? And like physical and emotional. I mean all of them go together, but physical and emotional, I think they just really go hand in hand with that trauma, like our trauma responses, right? And how we interact, and especially if we're abused, right? Like I noticed that for myself, like in my romantic relationships. I would do the really like mentally abusive things, and it took a while before I was like, what the heck am I doing? Like this is what they did to me. Like this, like taking stuff away, like to be harmful, or like just really sickening stuff that like I saw myself doing, and that was like part of that physical thing too, right? That trauma response was an emotional response to like
Understanding it and having
yeah,
some
my
insight
romantic
into your
partners.
own behaviors, right? And
Yeah. And the other piece was like expectations, I think is a big thing for as 60 scoop survivors, like with emotional as well as like those expectations, you know, like managing our expectations on things like for ourselves, for others, you know, like I was saying with those sacred bundles, like not everyone's gifted those items, and that's okay.
Yeah,
Not everyone's a pipe carrier, and that's okay.
yeah.
I just
Maybe
wanted
you're
to,
a word sharer, or you're a singer, or your job is just to be healing, you know, like and that's part of your bundle, your journey. Yeah.
Marni, go ahead.
sorry, I just wanted to quickly say that, just kind of going back to the actual creation of our own bundle. And so that empowerment that, through creating our own bundle, how that process in itself gives us that opportunity to do that self-reflection, that real kind of intention setting, and that sense of, I guess, agency in our own healing journey, because it is personal. It's something that we're creating through our kind of lived experience, and that the putting together of it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, really does allow us for that emotional release and that spiritual connection, and then hopefully that personal transformation.
Mm.
So they're not just artifacts; they're really that way to dive into that healing that will allow us to weave all those things together. That tradition, the spirituality, the even personal resilience.
Yeah.
It brings it all together, and it's our own. It's something we've created through our own lived experience, and we know what it is we need to put in our toolbox to pull out at some point down the road to help us get through those moments.
Yeah.
We have about 5 minutes left. I know our time goes by so quickly, and I'm hoping that we can continue to do these webinars in the future, to help inform people. But a few people have said, like, connecting your mind and body, safe, supportive places, understanding triggers and how they affect us, positive self-talk. This is great. Reflecting in a way that decolonizes my thoughts. Always be gentle and curious to questions and how I can best support myself at the moment. Teresa said, there's no wrong way to pray. And sitting by the land, releasing by the water. These are all great. We're going to add all these suggestions as much as we can to fit in here. And when this is being recorded, so we'll be sharing this to our website to share with other folks on how to foster that and build that own resilience bundle within yourself, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically. And we hope to continue this conversation with folks like yourself. I'm so grateful for your participation and helping us learn from you, but also like listening to us and the knowledge we have to share. I want to thank Nadine and Marni for joining us. Thank you for contributing and sharing your knowledge. And we do training, Elaine and I, with Priscilla has been our major, awesome, best program manager ever with this project. So I've been very grateful for all her help. And we offer training for 60 Scoop in regards to trauma being formed of trauma and triggers. We do the 60 Scoop. It takes about almost 2 hours to do that training because it's very intense and in-depth. We also do anti-racism training. And it can be part of a 2-day workshop that we facilitate. So you can reach us actually at the next slide, please, when you're done. I agree. This needs to be mandatory cultural competency training because the 60 Scoop is so unique and different from the Indian residential school survivors. Yes, we all lost our culture. Yes, we've all experienced trauma, but the difference is how we were trafficked and taken away from our communities for many thousands of miles away. So, and a lot of us haven't returned. And are living in urban centers or overseas or in the United States. And we're grateful for that we, have been repatriated and have learned from this. but we want to make sure that we help other survivors and people working with survivors. So if you can fill out our survey at the end, you have a chance to win a $25 gift certificate to 60. Somebody broke a window outside here. 60s, I'm sorry, Sister Sage, Kokum Scrunchies, or Denekri, or Sequoia. Is that the last slide? I think so. I think it's the last slide.
Can you
So-
show the webpage again? Yeah, thank you.
So these will be posted, this video and the first video will be posted on our website, edbendog.jizik. And then, so there's the JIIG, it's spelled wrong actually on here. It's ZIJIIG. If you could fix that. Right here, it's supposed to be another I in here. It'll be posted on that website and our 60 Scoop website, so 60scoopnetwork.org. We'll post both of those recorded videos on there. We aren't, the knowledge keepers who joined us in the last 2 sessions have asked for their stuff not to be recorded. So thank
And
you so
Marnie-
much. What's that?
Marnie had a really good, important, maintaining your bundle is important too, but it will change over time. And I really, really, it changes day by day. So thank you so much for
Yes,
joining
we
us
do
today.
offer
And thank
training.
you, Nadine and Marnie and Priscilla, for your amazing, amazing computer support, and Colleen and just everyone for joining us today. We had a good time.
Thank you so much. Take care. Have an awesome day. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us through our websites and
Yeah.
we'll respond to you as soon as we can. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Bama P.
Mama
Keep
P.
up.
Okay.
Did it close?
No, it didn't close. I have to close it.
Okay. Close on up. Close on up.
Say goodbye.
Thank you guys so much. It was amazing.
I think we still have guests in the room, so
Oh,
We're just gonna close the
don't know how
I
to
do
close.
have to run to another meeting,
okay. We'll
but
stop
Oh,
recording.
there we go. Oh no, wait. I just
No,
closed it.
people are still here.
Okay. I'm still recording, so I'm gonna stop recording.